was what I wanted to do, both because I wanted to remain true to my characters, real-life figures whom I had come to know and like in the course of both my travels and research, and because I wanted to suggest the dimensions of a world, the world in which Elvis Presley had grown up, the world which had shaped him, and which he, in turn, had unwittingly shaped, with all the homeliness and beauty that everyday life entails. Discovering the reality of that world was something like stepping off the edge of my own. The British historian Richard Holmes describes the biographer as a sort of tramp permanently knocking at the kitchen window and secretly hoping he might be invited in for supper. Holmes is presumably alluding to the researcher's attempt to penetrate the recesses of history, but he might as well be describing the literal truth. If one cannot recognize one's status as an outsider, if I were not able to laugh at the comic contretemps in which I have often found myself over the years, then I would be lacking in the humility necessary for the task. But if one were not vain enough, on the other hand, to think it possible to make sense of the mass of random detail that makes up a life, if one did not imagine oneself capable somehow of the most diverse explorations, divagations, and transcendental leaps, then one would never seek to tell the story. The moment one begins to investigate the truth of the simplest facts which one has accepted as true, wrote Leonard Woolf in his autobiography, it is as though one had stepped off a firm, narrow path into a bog or a quicksand. Every step one takes, one steps deeper into the bog of uncertainty. And it is that uncertainty which must be taken as both an unavoidable given and the only real starting point. For this book, I interviewed hundreds of first-hand participants. To my great joy, and not incidental distraction, I discovered worlds within worlds. The world of quartet singing, the pioneering spirit of post-World War II radio, the many worlds of Memphis, which I might have thought I already knew, the carnival world of self-invention and self-promotion out of which Colonel Thomas A. Parker emerged, the small-time dreams of a music industry that had not yet defined itself, the larger dreams of an art form that had not yet been explored. I have tried to suggest these worlds, and the men and women who peopled them, with a respect for the intricacy, complexity, and integrity of their makeup, but, of course, one can only suggest. As for the central figure, I have tried to convey his complexity and irreducibility as well. This is an heroic story, I believe, and ultimately perhaps a tragic one, but, like any of our lives and characters, it is not all of one piece. It does not lend itself to one interpretation exclusively, nor do all its parts reflect anything that resembles an undifferentiated whole. To say this, I hope, is not to throw up one's hands at the impossibility of the task. It is simply to embrace the variousness and uniqueness of human experience. I wanted to tell a true story. I wanted to rescue Elvis Presley from the dreary bondage of myth, from the oppressive aftershock of cultural significance. To the extent that I have succeeded, I suppose I have merely opened up the subject to new aftershocks, new forms of encapsulation. Like any biographer, I am sure I have worried over scenes, imagined and reimagined the way that things must have been, all too keenly aware of my own limitations of perspective and the distorting lens of history. I have sought to reconcile accounts that cannot be reconciled, and I have engaged in the kind of dialogue with my subject that Richard Holmes describes as leading to a relationship of trust between biographer and subject. As Holmes points out, trust is what one seeks, implicitly, to achieve, and yet there is always the possibility that trust is misplaced. The possibility of error, he insists, is constant in all biography. That is why I would like to suggest that this work, like any other, is a beginning, not an end, an invitation.
To keep listening to this audiobook for free, click the link in the description. It will take you to a free Audible trial where you can listen to this and many other books for free for 30 days.